I never thought a simple $8 bet and a cheap camera would end up ruining my life while simultaneously making me the most famous person on campus. But here we are, and frankly, I still don't know if I should be laughing or crying. Imagine standing in front of millions of people, your face plastered across every screen in the country during the Super Bowl, while your bank account sits at a literal zero and your dean is threatening to expel you for procedural misconduct. I'm sitting here wondering, was I wrong for what I did? Tell me if you would have done the same thing. I'm sitting here wondering, was it worth it to humiliate a billion-dollar tech giant just to prove a point to my roommates? Or did I just burn every professional bridge I'll ever have before I even graduated? Seriously, I need you guys to tell me. If you had the chance to pull off the ultimate prank on the world's biggest stage for the price of a fast food meal, would you take it? Or would you play it safe and stay anonymous? Because what started as a joke in a cramped dorm room turned into a legal nightmare that I'm still trying to wake up from. It all started on a Tuesday night in November, which is usually the time when my roommates, Leo and Sam, and I are at our peak level of unproductive idiocy. We were seniors at a mid-tier state school, majoring in marketing but mostly specializing in ordering late-night pizza, and complaining about how we'd never find jobs in a saturated market. Leo was scrolling through his phone when he saw a headline about the upcoming Super Bowl ad slots. He started scoffing, saying it was insane that companies were paying $7 million for 30 seconds of airtime. He was doing the math on how many lives that money could change, while Sam was just annoyed that the ads were getting boring and corporate. I remember laughing and saying that I could probably make something more memorable with the change in my pocket. I told them that the problem with big brands is they have too much to lose, so they play it safe, whereas a broke college student has absolutely nothing to lose but his dignity. Sam, who never misses an opportunity to escalate a situation, slammed a $10 bill on the coffee table. It was sticky from spilled soda and crinkled, but it felt like a gauntlet being thrown down. He dared me to do it. He told me that if I could actually get an ad to go viral enough that people talked about it during the Super Bowl, he'd pay for my rent for the rest of the semester. Now, I'm a competitive guy, and rent is expensive. I looked at that $10, took $2 out for a soda to fuel my brainstorming session, and told them I'd do it for $8. The plan was simple but stupid. We didn't have a product, we didn't have a budget, and we definitely didn't have a slot. But what we did have was a deep understanding of how the internet loves a David versus Goliath story, and how much people hate being sold to by polished, fake actors. We decided to create a fake brand called Zonk, which was literally just a bottle of tap water with a hand-drawn label I made with a dying Sharpie. The ad wasn't even about the water. It was about the fact that we were trying to buy a Super Bowl ad with $8. We filmed it on my 5-year-old smartphone in the middle of the campus fountain at 3 a.m. because we didn't want the campus security to kick us out. The water was freezing, and I was shivering so hard I could barely speak. The script was basically me staring into the camera, soaked to the bone, with my hair matted to my forehead, saying, "Hey Big Tech, we have $8 left in our budget after buying this soda. Please let us show this during the halftime show. We're better than a crypto scam, we promise." It was raw, it was poorly lit, and it looked like a hostage video, but it had this weird, desperate charm to it. We posted it on every social media platform imaginable with the hashtag $8 Super Bowl. For the first week, nothing happened. We got maybe 12 views, 6 of which were from my mom who kept commenting, "Stay warm, honey." But I didn't give up. I started spamming the comment sections of every major brand, not with bot-like links, but with genuine, funny pleas. I'd tag a major chip company and say, "Hey, I'll let you have 5 seconds of my $8 ad if you send us a party-size bag of barbecue chips." That caught the eye of a mid-level community manager, who thought it was hilarious. They replied, and suddenly the Zonk water bottle was a meme. People started making their own Zonk videos. It became a movement of the underfunded. We were the $8 boys. But the real madness started when a rival company of a major Super Bowl sponsor saw the traction we were getting. They were a massive VPN and data security firm called NexusStream that prided itself on being edgy. They realized that if they sponsored our $8 ad, they could hijack the Super Bowl conversation for a fraction of the cost of a real slot. They reached out to us secretly through a burner email. They didn't want to give us millions. They wanted to give us the tools to keep the underdog persona alive while they funneled traffic to their own site through a QR code hidden in our low-quality video. This is where things started to get messy. As the weeks went by, the pressure built to an unbearable level. We were skipping classes to handle interviews with national magazines. I remember sitting in a 400-level economics lecture, and my phone was buzzing so hard against my leg, I thought I was going to have a seizure. I stepped out to take a call, and it was a producer from a morning talk show. I was a 21-year-old kid in a hoodie talking to people who made six figures a month. The university administration finally caught wind of it when they saw me on the front page of the local paper standing in their fountain. They found out we were filming on campus without permits and using the school's logo in some of our background shots. The dean of students, a man named Dr. Henderson who looked like he hadn't smiled since 1994, called me into his office. He sat me down and told me that I was misrepresenting the academic integrity of the institution, and sent us a formal cease and desist. He threatened that if we didn't take the videos down, our degrees would be put under review. But that only fueled the fire. I walked out of his office and immediately filmed a TikTok saying the man was trying to shut down the $8 dream. By January, we had a cult following. People were printing Zonk t-shirts in their basements and selling them on Etsy. We were invited to talk shows, but we refused to go unless we could wear our cheap, stained hoodies. We wanted to keep the aesthetic as broke student as possible because we knew the moment we looked successful, the magic would die. But behind the scenes, the war room, which was just our messy living room, was becoming a battlefield. Leo and Sam started arguing about who actually owned the brand. Leo thought since he gave the original $10, he was the CEO and should make all the decisions. He actually started wearing a suit to our kitchen table meetings. It was pathetic and terrifying at the same time. Sam thought since it was his dorm room and his smartphone charger we were using, he was the owner. I was just the guy in the fountain, the face of the brand, but they treated me like an employee. They started making deals behind my back. I'd walk into the room, and the conversation would stop. I found a notebook where they had calculated their cut of the Nexus Stream deal, and my name was listed under talent fee, which was about 10% of the total. They were already planning to phase me out. I remember one specific night in late January when I walked into the kitchen and found them talking to a talent manager on Zoom. This guy looked like a shark in a cheap blazer. He was telling them that they needed to clean up the image, meaning I needed to stop acting like a broke student and start acting like a professional spokesperson. Leo was nodding along saying, "Yeah, we can get him a haircut and a better camera." They were talking about me like I was a piece of equipment they had rented. I stood there, hidden by the shadows of the hallway, listening to my best friends discuss how to manufacture my personality for a paycheck. It was the first time I felt truly alone in the middle of all the viral fame. I realized that the $8 boys was a lie. There were two guys who wanted to be millionaires and one guy who was just trying not to drown in the fountain. The tension in our apartment was thick enough to cut with a knife. We were sitting on a potential goldmine of sponsorship deals, but we hadn't signed anything because we were too busy fighting over hypothetical millions. I'd wake up to find Leo staring at a spreadsheet of projected earnings, and Sam would be on the phone with agents, who were clearly just trying to scam us. I realized then that fame, even the stupid internet kind, changes people instantly. It's like a magnifying glass for greed. If you have a tiny crack in your character, fame will rip it wide open until you're unrecognizable. My friends weren't my friends anymore. They were stakeholders. They started talking about scaling and monetization strategies, while I just wanted to finish the joke we started. I felt like I was losing my mind. I was 22 years old, and holding a literal cultural grenade in my hands. The Nexus Stream company was calling me every hour, whispering in my ear about how I didn't need Leo and Sam, how I was the star. They were trying to divide and conquer us before the contract was even signed. They even offered to fly me to Vegas for a private briefing, which was clearly just an attempt to get me away from my roommates, so they could sign me to a solo deal. I spent 3 nights in a row barely sleeping, just watching the Zonk mentions climb into the hundreds of thousands. I saw people calling us the voice of a generation, and the only real thing left in marketing. It felt like a heavy weight. If I took the money and did the corporate ad, I wasn't just letting myself down. I was letting down all those people who actually believed that a couple of broke kids could beat the system. I was the captain of a ship that everyone wanted to hijack. Every time I tried to talk to Sam about the scholarship fund idea, he would laugh in my face. Why would we give money away when we haven't even paid our own tuition? He'd say. Leo would back him up, saying that charity is for people who have already made it. They had lost the plot. They didn't understand that the reason people liked us was because we were different. If we became just another corporate shill, we'd be forgotten by Monday morning. So that's where I was, stuck between my greedy roommates, a predatory corporation, and a university that wanted my head on a stake. I was exhausted, paranoid, and honestly, a little bit heartbroken that my best friends were ready to sell me out for a paycheck. So, before I tell you how I ended up being the most hated and loved person on Super Bowl Sunday, I want you to stop right now. Seriously, pause the video and go to the comments. What would you have done? Would you have taken the corporate buyout and split the money with your backstabbing friends just to keep the peace and get the cash? Or would you have burned it all down for the sake of the ultimate joke? Would you have stayed loyal to people who were already planning your exit and calling you talent instead of friend? I really want to know if I'm the only one who would have chosen chaos over cash in this situation. Okay, so here is what happened. The night before the big game, the big tech company sent over a final contract via a high-priced lawyer who looked like he'd never seen the inside of a dorm room in his life. They wanted to pay us $50,000 up front to include their logo and a presented by tag in the final viral version of the ad that would be pushed out by every major bot farm and influencer they owned during the third quarter. 50 grand is a lot of money for a student. It could pay off my loans, buy me a car, and give me a massive head start. Leo and Sam were already picking out luxury watches online, laughing about how they'd never have to work a real job. They were literally high-fiving over the death of the Zonk joke and the birth of the Zonk empire. But I sat up late that night and read every single word of that 60-page contract. It was a trap. The contract stated they would own the rights to our likenesses, our voices, and the Zonk brand forever. They wanted to turn our organic, middle finger to the system joke into a corporate puppet show. They even had a clause that said we couldn't mention any other brand or political cause for 5 years without their written consent. I didn't say anything to my roommates when they finally passed out after a night of celebrating their future wealth with expensive champagne they bought on credit. I just waited for the room to go silent, opened my laptop, and went to work. My hands were shaking. I felt like a spy in my own home. I deleted the corporate version they had sent me, the one with the high-def graphics and the annoying Nexus Stream logo pulsing in the corner. I went back to the original, grainy, shaky $8 footage I shot in the fountain. But I added a new ending that I had been secretly editing for days. I used a simple text-to-speech voice to make it sound even more internet-y. Instead of a QR code for a tech company, I put a massive bold link to a transparency page I had hosted on a free domain. On that page, I uploaded screenshots of the contract they tried to make us sign. I highlighted the ownership clauses in bright red. I showed exactly how much the corporation had tried to pay us to sell out, and how they wanted to own our souls. I also included a link to a verified scholarship fund for students at our school who were struggling with tuition and food insecurity. Real problems that the university was ignoring while they chased me for permits. On Super Bowl Sunday, the energy in our apartment was electric and nauseating. Leo and Sam were wearing their new, expensive clothes, waiting for the big drop. They thought the Nexus Stream version was going live. I sat on the floor, clutching my laptop, my stomach in knots. I watched the first quarter in a daze. Every time a commercial came on, I felt a surge of bile in my throat. I saw celebrities laughing in multi-million-dollar sets, selling beer and cars, and I thought about the grainy video on my hard drive. When the halftime show started, I hit publish on every single platform. Within seconds, the Zonk video was everywhere. But as people started watching, the confusion set in. Then the realization. Then the explosion. People weren't just watching a funny ad. They were watching a whistleblowing event. The screenshots of the predatory contract started going viral on their own. The internet went nuclear. We weren't just the $8 boys anymore. We were the kids who flipped off the entire advertising industry and the corporate machine on its biggest night. My phone literally overheated and shut down from the notifications. It was vibrating so much it slid across the coffee table, like a possessed object. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The corporation's legal team sent me an email within 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Threatening to sue us for breach of verbal intent, defamation, and everything else they could throw at a wall. They were panicked because their brand was now synonymous with corporate greed and student exploitation. Leo and Sam woke up from their hangovers to find out their $50,000 had vanished into thin air. They didn't even look at the hero comments, they only saw the lost money. The confrontation in our kitchen was brutal. Leo threw a chair against the wall, screaming that I had betrayed the team. Sam called me every name in the book, his face turning a shade of purple I didn't know was humanly possible. He kept screaming that I had stolen his future. They tried to kick me out of the apartment that morning, throwing my clothes into the hallway while screaming that I had ruined their lives for a stupid moral high ground. The university, seeing the massive negative press regarding the scholarship fund, which made them look like they overcharged students while a kid in a fountain was doing more for them than the administration, doubled down on their threats. They actually sent campus security to my door to hand-deliver an interim suspension. I was sitting in my car, parked in a grocery store lot with all my belongings in trash bags, watching the world talk about me on the news while I literally didn't have enough money to buy a bag of chips. I was the most famous person in the country for an hour, and I was completely homeless. I remember crying in that parking lot. Not because I was sad, but because the adrenaline was finally leaving my system, and I realized I had absolutely nothing left but a laptop and a wet hoodie. But then, the tide turned in a way I never expected. Because the story was so huge and the sellout reveal was so documented, a massive civil rights lawyer who specialized in predatory contracts saw what was happening. He tweeted at me, offering to represent me pro bono. He called the university's bluff in a public statement, pointing out that expelling a student for donating potential earnings to a scholarship fund would be a PR suicide and a violation of free speech. The corporation backed off because suing a broke student hero was making their stock price dip as people started boycotting their services. The Zonk brand became a symbol of authenticity. I didn't get the $50,000. I didn't get a new car. Leo and Sam haven't spoken to me since graduation. And I heard they ended up failing their final marketing project because they couldn't explain the metrics of why the honest ad outperformed the corporate one. They still post bitter things about me on their private stories, but I've moved on. I graduated with a degree and a story that gets me into any room I want to be in. Every job interview I've had since then starts with the same question. Are you really the $8 guy? Looking back, that $8 ad was the most expensive thing I ever made. It cost me my roommates, my housing, and a lot of sleep, but it bought me my integrity and a career that I actually enjoy. I learned that in a world where everything is for sale, being the person who refuses to sell is the most powerful thing you can be. It was a wild, terrifying, and exhilarating ride, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat, even if it meant living on ramen and sleeping in my car for another year. It taught me that real marketing isn't about the budget, it's about the truth. If you think I did the right thing by choosing the joke and the truth over the payout, make sure to like this video. If you think I'm a total idiot who should have taken the money and run, tell me why in the comments. I've heard it all before, so don't hold back. Subscribe for more stories about how I managed to survive my own bad decisions and accidental fame. And share this with anyone who needs to know that you don't need millions to make a statement. Sometimes, all you need is $8 and the guts to say no. I'll see you all in the next story.